Hi, Sjoerd. How are you?
Hi there, Paul. Good. Yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. I ran 5K, so that was my fitness goal for the week to do it at least once. I
For the
pref-
week. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. No,
yeah, it's like try to have a peak goal, and then I
excellent.
prefer to-do lists over like appointments because then if something happens, it's
Still, you made your goal. Oh, that's all right.
right,
Yeah,
right,
very good.
right.
Very good.
So a couple of years ago, we worked together briefly at the Port of Rotterdam, and then your venture had just joined there and it's now independent. Can you tell us something about your venture journey?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, Paul. It was indeed nice to work with you back then. I think at the time we were still part of this internal department, so to say. I think it's digital business solutions. It was called at the time. And we are, I think, about to step out, so to say, or to spin off as a separate
Right,
entity. And well, now we are, right? So at the time, I think it was October 2018 when we established PortXchange as a separate business,
hmm
still 100% owned by the Port of Rotterdam Authority, but with a clear mission to bring one of the main digital developments from the Port of Rotterdam to other ports worldwide, and thereby support shipping companies that visit the Port of Rotterdam, but actually a lot of ports to help them optimize their operations in any
right.
port. Yeah.
So if I get it, you made a product that can be used by ports, a digital product, which was then used by the Port of Rotterdam and kind of they bought you out, and then started also offering the service to other ports. And now there's a spin out, which is doing that, which is
Exactly.
offering this.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, it was not exactly like that. So it started with the idea that a lot of information
Mm-hmm.
required to make decisions about vessels moving in and out of ports was not digitized.
Right.
So that information was siloed, shared with parties over the phone through faxes and old ways of communication.
Right.
And obviously, many industries stepped into the digital era quite a few years ago, and still shipping was lagging. So
Yeah.
with that idea, basically, was brought to the Port of Rotterdam through sort of, let's say, an industry task force, including the biggest shipping lines in the world. They said we need to solve this. However, at the time, there were no tools available to facilitate that information exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So the Port of Rotterdam said, well, let's start an incubator. This was, I think, back in 2015 when they started their strategic themes, as they have every 5 years,
Yeah.
one on digitalization, because it was basically a hot topic back then, still is, obviously. And then they said, okay,
Yes.
let's build this ourselves with some of our community members, being those
Yeah.
large shipping lines, terminals, etc. And that became quite a success because
Cool.
everyone saw that by sharing information in real time, they could take better decisions and avoid unnecessary anchoring or waiting time, etc., with a low cost. So that would, for them to save fuel, to save time, and eventually save emissions. Now, these large companies or these large shipping lines, they have a global perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't
Mm-hmm.
just care about Port of Rotterdam, they care about hundreds of ports that they call on every
Of
year
course.
on
Yeah.
their global, let's say, business. And so they basically said to the port, well, it's good to, let's say, optimize Rotterdam, but if we wait in the adjacent ports, then still our end-to-end supply chain is not optimized.
Right.
So why don't you help us with also offering the same solution based on the same standards to other ports? And that was basically the starting point of a move that we made with the port to establish a separate company. So basically, the Port of Rotterdam started with it. It was tested there, and then driven by customer demand, it was spun off.
Excellent. That's a great journey, but it is relatively rare. I mean, it happens, but you don't see a whole lot of startups experience that journey like that. Why do you think that is? What is
Well,
the great filter?
yeah, well, yeah, I've seen, in my career before I joined the Port of Rotterdam was with DSM, a large chemical company in the innovation center,
hmm
and a lot of similar projects in terms of global impact were kept for the individual business
Right.
because of IP, because of competitive advantage. Um, there's a lot of sort of, well, we do it the best ourselves. only with the emergence of, let's say, things like open innovation and more, let's say, corporate venture capital, like corporates investing in startups, more of an inside-out view emerged, where they said, well, we could actually spin things off in joint ventures. And in some industries, joint ventures are very common, right? So in oil and gas, for example, there's joint ventures is just the best way to organize things and
for certain kinds of projects. Yes,
exactly for big infrastructure projects, for example. But when it comes to commercializing new technology, many corporates just want to sort of stick it to do it themselves, because they did the main investment, and they try to optimize their own business before someone else does.
Right. So what are the three main things that you could say went really well so that PortXchange had this journey to independence?
Well, it mainly started with the vision from the Port of Rotterdam managing board, I guess, to listen to these customers and say, well, we won't keep this for ourselves. We understand shipping is a global business. We are a important but regional player, despite the fact that the port has also investments in other ports, obviously. They said, let's work with them to create a, let's say, separate entity. So that was one vision. And then second, in the sort of carve out, as we did, let's say, that process, I think it was very important for us to piggyback on some of the functional expertise the port has. Right. You have this famous article, I think it's already decades old, but it's Govind, Rajan, and Trimble who talk about forget, borrow, learn. Right. Well, that's exactly what we applied. We forgot a lot of things that were common in the port. We borrowed, with crazy, because we tried in marketing, in legal, in all kinds of things the port is very good at. There was an unfair advantage to us. Yeah, and we had to learn obviously a lot of new things, and we were allowed to do so. So the second thing is to make use of that capacity, the functional support, and then I think finally was the financial commitment, obviously, that really helped us get things done quickly. I could focus on running the business, setting up the business, instead of being fundraising 60%.
Yeah, chasing those tickets. Yeah, it's really tough on founders. Also, in the European startup ecosystem, you can spend a lot of time chasing tickets because it's just a little bit less liquid than some other markets we like to look at, like in the US.
Yeah.
So the three main things are: the corporate needs to have the courage and the humility to say, okay, we can create something new here for the market, but maybe we shouldn't keep it to ourselves. They need to offer you their unfair advantage of corporate level back office services to kind of keep your focus. And they need to bankroll you sufficiently so you can really focus on your product and execution. Those are the three winning things.
Nicely summarized. Yeah.
Right. That's excellent advice. So what was the hardest thing for you as founder and exec of this?
Well, the hardest thing, I guess, was to fight the corporate antibodies.
Right.
I think everyone who's involved in corporate innovation knows this. There's always people who say, well, let's not do this. And as long as you're part of the corporate family, that voice has some merit, has some clout internally. So I think we spend most of our time in building that carve-out team,
right,
including the right stakeholders on all different levels, to ensure that whenever the decision was due, everyone was informed and knowledgeable and actually said, well, yeah, this is okay, let's move on with this. And then afterwards it was sort of, you need to stick to that decision then again, right? So I think that took a lot of time. So you can say, well, I freed up some time by not fundraising externally, but it cost me time to ensure the internal stakeholder process. Right. But yet again, this is super important, right? Because if you don't do that right, it may take even longer, or it will not ever happen at all. So I think that was one of the, and you need to keep explaining to everyone, why do you need to go outside with this project if it's so successful for Rotterdam? Right. And up to the COO level, who gave us some fair challenge about why should we do this externally? We care about Rotterdam, and rightfully so. And then obviously the big customers who said, well, we'll ensure you get your share as being Rotterdam, but we want the world to benefit from your creativity and genius in this sense, to use the same platform.
Right. It's very interesting because I'm currently editing the previous interview, which I did with someone from the automotive industry,
Okay.
who also said like his number one challenge was alliance management.
Yes. Yeah. And in the automotive, that's also obviously a very important one, is you only have a few dominant players. You need to get them, otherwise you're non-existent to a degree. And I think, well, to a degree, that's also the case with shipping, especially if you look at the container lines. I mean, a large part of the volumes is done by the top 10 worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's, but then again, on the port side, there's a lot of ports, right? There's 4,500 ports globally. So they all have their own journeys to digitize. So in that sense, there's a huge market, but you need to have the carriers, let's say, also involved. So that's a bit of an alliance type of business. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, this breaking of information silos leads to an entirely different dynamic in the market. Are there any losers in the story? Is there anybody whose business model is no longer valid because now you're sharing this information digitally?
Well, no, I don't think so, honestly. I think everyone will benefit from this, because a more efficient port will attract more volume, and thereby the whole community will benefit. Although, honestly, the roles of some of those parties will change, right? So you probably remember we had some very tough discussions with the agencies, a ship broker basically, who helps the shipping line to arrange and pay for services the vessel needs in a particular port, for example, so maintenance, supplies. There's a whole industry around that, obviously.
Absolutely.
And they do very, very important work. And part of that work is relaying information, because they need to know when is the terminal available, when is the bunker supplier or the fuel supplier available, when are the groceries due to be delivered to the vessel.
Yeah. They need to line up a whole bunch of stuff.
Sometimes it's up to 25 companies that are involved in one vessel calling on a port. So what happens to the plannings of those 25 companies if that vessel gets delayed somewhere? Or if, let's say, the vessel is early and someone in the system forgets to update the rest, then there's a lot of, let's say, inefficiency. So I'm not blaming the agencies, because they do great work. However, that information sharing capacity is going to change. And you see some of the global agency businesses already investing in it with their own digital tools. And you have smaller agencies who basically can't afford or don't want to change that business model, and they feel disrupted. Although the digital will never, it will never overtake the whole process. I mean, there's so much to arrange for this vessel. There's so much clearance to give to the customs and all that kind of stuff. It is just an aid to their business instead of completely overtaking their business.
Right. It can be seen as an opportunity. Yeah. And Sjoerd, what is your personal mission in leading this company? When do you get to say, okay, for me, I've accomplished my mission, I'm handing this off to somebody else, and I'm going to the next adventure?
Yeah, I thought about that a bit.
Saw that one coming, huh?
Yeah, well, no, actually, I think it's good for entrepreneurs to think about where are you going, and what is the part of the entrepreneurial journey that you're exceptionally good at. Because we cannot all be leaders of large corporations, and not everyone is as creative and hustle minded to get from 0 to 1.
Right.
So now, when I think we're successful, it's definitely when we reach our biggest milestone, is to take this to 100 ports and beyond, right? And to do that as fast as possible, because we started with one port, create an installed base of users, and from 100 ports onwards, I think it has been proven we have the whole system in place, and we can actually keep scaling with more money. Yeah, that could still be super interesting for me. I don't know. I haven't been there before in that type of role, so maybe I'll grow with the company. Or maybe at some point I'll say, well, I like that first hustle period when we started with almost nothing, just a few guys, basically, trying to hack our way
Hmm.
through all these difficulties and building something new. I mean, I truly enjoy what we're doing now. Creating a team, we started with 5 people, then you hire your first, followers, so to say, and
Yeah.
really setting up that mission, building the culture, the DNA, looking for new hires and see how they influence, let's say, the way the business is run. Um, that HR part of a growing company, together with the funding elements, together with sort of growing your business internationally. I mean, it's super challenging, but also super
Yeah.
exciting. I wonder how excited I'll get once we have, I don't know, a few offices and a lot of large customers, and it's all about procedure and numbers.
Right.
I feel that should be, maybe that's the moment to step out and to do something else. But until now, I think we have, from now on, we have still a lot to grow and learn. So
Right.
yeah,
Oh, that's a very nice and humble way to formulate it. I mean, as long as you feel the flow
yeah,
and the hustle, you're in to keep on carrying on in that leadership role.
yeah.
And then once you personally feel like you're no longer the best place and the best person in that position, then
Yeah, I think let's be honest there, right? You have great executives who know
mhm,
how to run big businesses. And I've been in big businesses before, but running them
mhm,
is a different thing. And I don't know whether I like to do it or whether I'm good at it. So yeah, also they'll make that decision when it gets there. One interesting thing there is what I found very inspiring. I worked with Bas van Abel years
mhm.
ago. He was the founder of Fairphone,
Yeah,
and he
yeah, we'll
he
put the link.
he humbly stepped down at a certain point. He said, "My role in Fairphone now is
Hmm.
complete." Or at least he started to do something else, and he had someone else step in. And the way he expressed sort of the reasons why, and the gratitude and the humbleness of saying, "Well, now I trust my baby to someone else, because then it
Right.
will be a better. Let's say it will even grow even further beyond what I can bring it." I found that very inspiring, and
Yeah.
also very honest to say, "Well, I'm not the guy that they basically runs companies from zero, from cradle to grave. There are just a few people in the world, I think, who are able to do that properly."
Right. And who was your best venture coach in who helped you along on your journey?
Wow. I recall at a certain moment in time, I was desperately seeking out venture coaching,
Hmm.
because I think this is the particular for spin-offs that sort of start within a corporate environment. Um, and you're first time sort of leading a project, um, and you don't know what to look for and what are the right metrics, right? What is the
Right.
right way to look into these opportunities?
Exactly.
What is the
Yeah.
burn you should be achieving? What is the there's no I mean, good guidance there. And when you
Not
ask,
inside the corporate.
not inside the corporate, exactly. So once sort of, okay, what should be the hiring process? How do we do recruitment? And then you ask a corporate HR person who comes up with a procedure, and sort of, and you
Right.
put it out internally first, and before you put it out externally, and it takes months to write down the right whatever, and you need to
Yeah.
apply.
And
So
you're like, I need this specific dev
but
tomorrow.
I need the guy tomorrow. And also about remuneration, we had lengthy discussions about, what is the pay, the variable, and the fixed income,
Right.
right? To
Government pay
where can we
scales.
go? The whole remuneration scheme is rightfully set for the corporate, not so much for you,
Hmm.
because or you pay super high fees to people because you can't compensate in equity, right? So I realized the corporate environment was not the right, let's say, mindset or the right framework for me to challenge some of the beliefs I had, or to look into how to learn on new things.
And did you find someone?
Yes, I found a few people. So one person who is still on our advisory board is Rutger Schouten. He's
Hmm.
a general partner at Brooklyn Ventures. We met
Hmm.
him through an accelerator program. Actually, he was very sharp, and really helped out on a lot of issues. And now every time I have a thing, I call him. Also through the advisory board, but also intermediately, how to deal with
Hmm.
hires, how to deal with stakeholder management, how to deal with, let's say, cap tables and governance structures and these kind of
Right.
things.
Right.
I like
Yeah.
the investor perspective first and foremost, because he's seen so many different startups, and he knows how to deal with corporate as they are co-investing in his startups as
Yeah.
well. So that was
Yeah.
super useful, and that
Yeah.
really shifted my mindset a bit from seeking advice outside than instead of inside. And I learned lots from books. So the one I just mentioned to you, the Ben Horowitz story about the hard thing about hard things.
Yeah.
You read that one, it's not always as applicable because he has been on quite a journey as well. But there's so much wisdom and so much experience from that book.
Yeah.
So
If you have ears to hear, kind of,
yeah,
there's a lot in there.
yeah. If you know what you're looking for and more, then you just read it. Basically, you learn about how to take certain decisions and what the balancing points are.
Do you see yourself becoming a venture coach?
Could be. I like it. On the other hand, I have my hands full now with running my own.
Right.
And it's about experience, right? That's also what Ben talks about. He says, well, how can you know what salesperson to hire if you're not a salesperson yourself? Or how do you know to hire the best engineers if you're not an engineer yourself? You cannot be the expert in all those roles. You shouldn't be because you're the CEO. So how do you get good advice on what is a good hire?
Yeah. You need somebody who's been through a couple of dumpster fires, because resumes have the unfortunate effect of emphasizing all the successes, but you can hire brittle geniuses very easily.
Yeah.
And then when you're in your own dumpster fire.
Yeah. No, and I think currently the startup or entrepreneur ecosystem is emerging and becoming more and more dense. Also in the Netherlands, I think there's good activity. So getting in touch with those networks instead of having just one or two venture coaches is super useful, because you get experience from different types of people. And it's always good to have experience from people who are or in the same industry or in the same type of business as you are. I mean, I can talk to a lot of maritime industry venture capital people, but if they never run a software as a service business, a lot of their advice is sort of not applicable to our case. Right. So you need to find that sort of right match of someone who has a personal connection, but also has the experience in entrepreneurship on the right industry, in the right type of business, that basically make it super exciting, because then you can. Yeah.
Right. And then it becomes a very rare creature to find, indeed.
It is. But once you have those, I mean, then you have a real connection, right? You share the same issues and learn a lot from each other.
So what's the number one thing that you need as an entrepreneur right now, but you do not have? Is that funding, specific skill in your team, certain assets? What is right now really frying your noodle?
Okay, if it was me personally, I would say experience. Right? Although we're now 2.5 years, almost 3 years into the game, we learned an awesome amount. Still, there's a lot of new things, and I need to take the experience from others. So experience definitely helps. But then looking at the team, I think you need to. One of our biggest challenges is to scale the team related to the business, and the business is, especially in these times, quite volatile. So how do you get to the right team size without overburning and having people idle, or without sort of being constantly under pressure of not having enough people? Because some people actually once you hire them, they need to be become experts. It takes so before you know it, you're 6 months down the road before someone becomes really effective, and then those 6 months are tough. Right, so that's a constant struggle, part of the growing pains, so to say.
Right now it is really crazy. There's on the one hand, there's so many ships being sent to the breakers. On the other hand, there are certain kinds of business that are shipping more than ever before. I mean, all the freight companies are just printing money.
Which is, they all know it's not sustainable either, so it's a brief moment in time. But I hope definitely that some of the developments that have been set in motion are going to last, right? And some businesses will definitely run out because of the new normal.
And okay, with respect to NDAs and confidentiality, what was the biggest problem that you encountered where you were like, oh my God, how are we ever going to survive this?
Yeah. That was interesting. So before we actually knew what we were looking into, we did a very a test run with one of our large companies or customers in Rotterdam, and it was the
Yeah.
first one where we actually applied a sort of a more of a Lean Six Sigma approach, really measured, really data driven, to truly understand what the benefits are. And we did some desktop exercises, back of the envelope calculations, looking into significant numbers when it comes to saving potential. Now we did this trial, and let's say we expected to save 50-60%, and we ended up with 18. And I was like, oh my god, this is nowhere near. How can we ever be sort of successful if even in this particular trial it's not even near what we expected?
Well, 18% is pretty significant.
Well, but if you expect 60,
yes,
right, then
it feels like
it's failure. Like something went wrong, or what do we learn? And then we started talking, obviously, a lot to the company that we worked with, and we realized for them 18% was a lot, because it's all about context. They said Rotterdam is a super optimized port. This actually is a terminal where we only have a few vessels a week. So we didn't expect anything. We just wanted to test you guys to see whether you could implement it, and we get people on the work floor to work with it, and the process change. And still we're able to make 18%. That's amazing. So they were super happy, which surprised me again, because I thought, well, we expected 60.
Right.
Everything worked. So we checked all things. Everything was on green. But still the outcome was sort of not really what we expected, but the customer was super happy. So that was an interesting sort of moment where, Steve Blank said it once, one day you're in business, the next day you think you dominate the world, the next day you're out of business, and the next Monday you're back in business again. Sort of that was that sort of roller coaster week where we said, yes, we completed the trial, the product works, everyone is happy, then, but the results are, disappointing to say the least. And then the next day the customer is super happy saying, we're going to press release this, and, what's next?
Very cool story. Very, very cool story. So it's really the beauty of your product is in the eyes of the beholder, the customer, and their expectations matter much more than your own.
Yeah, and what we learned is also to understand the context of the customer better. So what is their bigger business objective behind this, and actually how do they run their business to see what is significant to them.
And I mean, Sjoerd, you work in a maritime sector, albeit in a very digital way. Are you like a seaman at all? Are you a blue ocean type of guy?
Yeah. Well, personally, absolutely. So I sail a lot. I'm from Friesland, so
right.
I knew how to sail before I rode a bike, so to say.
Right.
And water sports is my true passion, right? So I do kite surfing, skiing, ice skating. I was happy the last couple of weekends that we could ice skate again. So yeah, water and boats is a thing very known to me. Although I have to say, I studied industrial engineering, so I didn't go to the maritime school or sailed on vessels.
Right.
But I know a thing or two about logistics as well. So.
Right. Yeah. No. I love sailing, but I learned over in the Caribbean in my youth, and like on the open sea. So here there's a lot of like inland waters, and they're pretty busy. So here I'm always terrified to sail into something or someone, and trying to have eyes everywhere.
Yeah.
Whereas blue water sailing in the Caribbean is a lot easier because winds are very predictable. There's not a lot of tides. There's nobody else there. It's it's
a lot more boring though, although you have good weather. So I recognize that, Paul. When I sail the Waddenzee, right? That's super difficult because of the water height,
the
tides and stuff. You can really run aground.
Yeah.
Also sailed in Croatia for a few times, in Greece. I mean, there's 70 meters depth, so the only thing you care about is whether your anchor line is long enough. It's a different type of sailing.
Yeah. So, and do you think this is the same thing with startups? If you had to do what you did now in a completely different domain, would you have to kind of learn to sail again?
I see it as a different type of boat. So you could still sail, you know how to use the wind, but the steering is different. Your boat will react differently to currents or to winds because you're in a different industry or a different type of business. So I think what I like now is building a business, building a team has certain, I think, experiences that you can replicate in other industries.
Right.
Looking for talent, knowing how to build, experience how to build a culture, but also how to engage with customers. But then how that will whether that will be successful right on or when it will take longer, and how do you work with the feedback you get from the market, from investors, that really differs in the type of business, I think. So that would be you would need to relearn that.
Yeah. That's very interesting, and it also ties into what you said earlier about having to find the right coaches in your network who know the waters you're sailing, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's actually a pretty good analogy. Maybe there's a blog post in there somewhere.
No, let me know. I can if I find some spare time.
Excellent. That's great. All right, Sjoerd, I'm gonna ask you a bonus question.
Okay.
So how do you get around
How do we get
outside of Corona times?
Right. Well, if I go to the office, it's by train. But yeah, these days are not much. But and we have a policy now. We compensate for flight CO2 as well. So that was before Corona. I mean, that's the interesting thing. All our customers are abroad, mostly.
Yeah.
So the other ports that you need to travel quite a lot. So that's mostly how we come around, sort of as a team. The daily commute is by train or bike. Actually, just before Corona, I cycled to the office quite a few times, and also during Corona, actually, when we were still allowed to go to the office 1 day a week, or at least we allowed ourselves. That was good because I live in Delft and the office is in Rotterdam, so that's about an hour cycle. I like it. It's a good way to sort of get ready for the day or to wind down when you get back. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. And do you now instigate some kind of a virtual commute or some other ritual to start up and wind down?
Yeah, so at home, it's mostly my day starts pretty early as I have 2 little children. So they wake up around 6 or 6:30. So then I play with them a bit. We have the breakfast, and then I start around 8, 8:30. So yeah, then that's basically now just 2 stairs up in the house and settle myself with a coffee. What I like to do, and I don't get it enough, but you need some time to think or just to do a big task. I'm a big fan of Kahneman with the system 1-2 type of way to wire your brain. So if I have the time in the morning, I read a longer piece, or I watch a podcast or a webinar or something that allows you to sort of stick to one thing a bit longer than just a few minute email type of work. Just to wire the brain in the good way in the morning, and then it is easier to come through the day. Also with meetings, you tend to stay focused for longer periods of time. What we do now as a company, we try to facilitate the serendipity that you usually have in the office that we don't have at all in this way of working.
Right.
So we have these, the normal stuff, right? The cocktail workshop and the fun get-togethers and then the quizzes, and we do some random walks and all those kind of things.
Cool.
We think about a chess tournament, by the way, because we, from the data engineers and the data scientists, there's quite a lot of chess players.
Yeah.
So let's see. You have to do something.
They're all too smart by half. Give them a Go tournament because they'll have to start.
Indeed. There were a few who said, "Do you play Go as well?" I said, "Well, I did that before, yes, but I can't say I'm a good player." But that will be next level, I guess.
Exactly. No, even if you're pretty good here, like a 7-year-old person from Japan can beat your pants off easily.
Yeah.
Or Korean. Yeah,
indeed. No, so those kind of things. And to wind down is a bit the same. I started with this small ritual about a 5-minute meditation, just to sort of get my energy down from the work, because normally it's a hectic day and a lot of meetings and energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
just lay awake if I don't turn off.
It's good to be there and sort of in the zone. You get a lot of stuff done. But before I go down and play with the kids and help out with dinner and stuff. You need to sort of detach yourself, because otherwise I'm on my phone and thinking about stuff from work that is still lingering around, and that's not. I don't like it. Now, normally you do those things on the bike or on the train ride or in your car going back from work to home, and now you need to facilitate more specifically. So, and by the way, another ritual I have before I forget is to change clothes. Really, I take down my shirt, and it's also because the 1-year-old I have tends to do a lot of climbing on me. So if I'm not careful, they just waste my clothes, or the food gets on it or everything. So I shift to something a bit more, let's say, children-proof, and that also helps. And sort of then I'm at home again, and not at work.
Right, the schlumping outfit.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very good idea, because I do that, but not intentionally. Like, sometimes it happens that you change clothes because you went for a run or whatever, but it does work. It puts you in a different mind space. Really.
Yeah, that's what I experienced. So actually, I did it first because of practical reasons. I didn't want my nice my shirts to be ruined. But then I also realized, well, this really allows me to sort of, then I'm at home instead of at work. Also mentally, it's a shift. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I learned a bunch of new things. I'm gonna parse out your recommendations and links and people that you mentioned, put them in the show notes.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. It was a great fun.